say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
US President John Fitzgerald Kennedy's visit to Dallas, Texas on November the 22nd, 1963 was aimed at boosting his re-election bid ahead of the 1964 presidential vote. Thousands turned out to see the iconic leader and his wife Jacqueline travel in a motorcade through downtown Dallas.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
At 12:30 p.m. local time, as the president's open-top limousine reached Dealey Plaza, 3 gunshots were fired at the convoy. 2 bullets hit the president, 1 wounded him at the back of the neck and throat, the other caused a massive and fatal head injury. A government investigation found the shots were fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository by 24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald. But the suspect was never tried. 2 days later, he was shot dead by local cabaret owner Jack Ruby during a prison transfer.
What's your feelings, your experience that day in Dallas?
Well, of course, it was a horrible experience. We were in a parade, a motorcade, down through the main part of town. We turned on Elm Street to go under the overpass, and I heard this sound that I thought was a rifle shot. And I was in the process of turning to look over my left shoulder when I felt an impact as if someone hit me with a closed fist right in the middle of my back.
The fact the identity of Kennedy's assassin was never proven in the courts has given rise to various alternative and unproven theories as to what really happened and who may have been behind it.
Was there a conspiracy? I don't know. I was there, but I was taken immediately to the hospital. I didn't know that Oswald had been apprehended and killed because I was still out.
A House of Representatives report in 1979 concluded there was a high possibility that 2 gunmen were involved.
If Oswald had a conspirator working with him, he's never been identified. A lot of strange things happened surrounding the assassination that there's no good explanation for. This gives rise to all the suspicions.
So what really happened that day? Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we? They don't shoot him coming up Houston, which is the easiest shot for a single shooter in the book depository. They wait. They wait till he gets to the killing zone between 3 rifles. Kennedy makes a final turn from Houston on the Elm, slowing down to some 11 miles an hour. The first shot rings out, sounding like a backfire, and misses the car completely. Frame 161, Kennedy stops waving as he hears something. Conley's head turns slightly to the right. Frame 193, the second shot hits Kennedy in the throat from the front. You can see that he's obviously been hit, raising his arms to his throat. The third shot, frame 232, hits Kennedy in the back, pulling him downward and forward. Conley, you will notice, shows no signs at all of being hit. He is visibly holding his Stetson, which is impossible if his wrist has been shattered. Conley is turning here now, frame 238. The 4th shot, it misses Kennedy and takes Conley in the back. This is the shot that proves there were 2 rifles. The car brakes. The 6th and fatal shot, frame 313, takes Kennedy in the head from the front. This is the key shot. The president going back and to his left. Shot from the front and right. Totally inconsistent with the shot from the depository. Again, back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Police have issued an all-points bulletin for a well-dressed young white man seen running from the scene. Officers also reportedly chased and fired on a radio-equipped car containing 2 white men. Police said they found a high-powered hunting rifle about a block from the hotel, but it was not immediately identified as the murder weapon.
One of the larger stains the FBI has ever had to endure on its not-so-spotless record was revealed in its entirety Thursday. A letter asking Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself, signed, sealed, and delivered by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. The letter, known as the suicide letter, refers to the leader of the civil rights movement as sexually psychotic, a dissolute, abnormal imbecile, and a fraud. It ends with the famous warning, "You have just 34 days. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bare to the nation." Dr. King assumed the letter and tape were from the FBI, and after his death, a Senate committee confirmed as much. FBI Director James Comey acknowledged this blemish in the FBI's past when he was first introduced as director, telling the crowd, "I'm going to direct that all new agents and analysts also visit the Martin Luther King Memorial here in Washington. I think it will serve as a different kind of lesson, one more personal to the Bureau, of the dangers in becoming untethered to oversight and accountability."
So you heard the news on the radio? Is that the way you heard it? So you were driving, you left that gas station at 2nd and Linden, what, about 6 or?
I don't have any way of knowing. I think it's around that time, but I don't even know if it's Linden. I know the approximate area it is. And I've seen the map on the Enquirer.
And you were going back to pick up this man that you say is Raul? Is
no, I just waiting the car back.
So you heard all this confusion, turned and flipped on the radio. They said Dr. King's been shot. Did you think you were set up at that point?
No, I was headed toward New Orleans when I had the radio on. I used to keep the radio on. I think
the ones pulling all of the strings today are generally called the deep state, the manipulative group controlling human consciousness through nefarious means. But with that, the mysteries of who is behind all of this aside, how exactly do the world elite control human consciousness?
Then, to my surprise, they asked me to go over with Woodrow Wilson to the peace conference. And at the age of 26, I was in Paris for the entire time of the peace conference.
Wilson's reception in Paris astounded Bernays and the other American propagandists. Their propaganda had portrayed Wilson as a liberator of the people, a man who would create a new world in which the individual would be free. They had made him a hero of the masses, and as he watched the crowd surge around Wilson, Bernays began to wonder whether it would be possible to do the same type of mass persuasion, but in peacetime.
When I came back to the United States, I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace.
Since the end of the 19th century, America had become a mass industrial society, with millions clustered together in the cities. Bernays was determined to find a way to manage and alter the way these new crowds thought and felt.
And so Eddie began to formulate this idea that you had to look at things that would play to people's irrational emotions. And you see, that moved Eddie immediately into a different category from other people in his field and most government officials and managers of the day.
To start this video, we're going to start by playing the national anthem, which was the sign-off on television stations across the nation back in the 1960s.
Our national anthem.
Back in the 60s, scientists One scientist in particular was able to do experiments on people watching television, and he found that within 30 seconds to a minute of watching television, your brain goes from a beta wave state, which is an alert, awake, thinking state, which primarily uses the left side of your brain, which is where your critical thinking skills lie, to an alpha state, which is more of a relaxed, daydreaming type state, where you essentially go on autopilot and you become a passive learner to the information that's coming into your mind. Television is a form of basic mind control. When you are in an alpha wave state, you are suggestible to whatever's going into your mind, what you're seeing, at a subliminal level that you cannot critically analyze as you are viewing it. So quickly, you can barely see it. But you aren't meant to physically, literally see it. You are meant to subconsciously see it. It is meant to go into the subconscious and implant itself into your brain on a subconscious level. And this continues throughout this entire national anthem, and it becomes basically like the script for the movie They Live. This video was shown signing off of television programming for the day throughout the 60s, and we know that during that time is the same exact time that the mass mind control MK Ultra project, the government covert operation, was going on in the United States. They were carrying it out on the American people, and that's been admitted. The CIA admitted it in, what, 1970? And there's even a speech where Bill Clinton apologized for it in 1995. So this is all on record. This is not a debunked video by any means. In fact, everything I've looked up on this video has only gone to show that it is in fact a real video that was in fact shown on national television networks throughout the country in the 1960s. And if you guys think they're not using this kind of programming today, I assure you that they are. It's just gotten much, much more sophisticated. I have lots of documentation on that, lots of research studies on that, and I will be bringing more reports to show you exactly how these kinds of technologies are used to keep the masses in check, to keep you buying the establishment line, and to keep people from thinking critically and asking questions. And that's what we all have to start doing, is thinking more critically about the information that's going into our minds and asking more questions. As soon as we stepped out of the subway and started walking down the street towards the new World Trade Center Ground Zero area, when we first walked up on Oculus, the new World Trade Center transportation hub, I was pretty horrified. You can ask Aaron. I couldn't stop talking about that, and I almost didn't want to even go over to the Ground Zero area for a while because I was fixated on how horrified I was by this bone structure. It looks like it's out of Lion King or something. And when the guard told us it was supposed to be a dove of peace, I actually laughed in his face because I was just like, you gotta be kidding me that they're actually trying to tell people that. It's not a bird. Quite obvious. They called it Oculus. What does Oculus mean? Eye. Okay? It's not a bird. Living, breathing building. That's what they refer to it as, a living, moving building. It's a living creature, it's evolving, it's morphing because it's receiving a skin. That's how they talk about this Oculus building. And all of these buildings are way over budget, and they know it, but that's not what this is about. I mean, One World Trade Center. Even if it garners $120 million in rent a year from the businesses inside it, it would still take 35 years to recoup the cost of construction. But as one worker on the site says, that's hardly the point. Quote, "This building wasn't built to make money. It was built to demonstrate something to the world."
The entertainment industry has been a source of conspiracies for a long time, with often disturbing subliminal messages in children's entertainment, such as references to suicide and sex found in everything from Disney movies to SpongeBob. At the highest level of control, fear is one of the most easiest methods to control the population in mass. This is a two-way street that binds the influence from the elite and us together, for we actively perpetuate the problem when we live from fear and scarcity, spreading it around to each other like a nasty virus. Fear can be used to corral people in all manner of directions, to take actions that are not in their best interest, or to give up their power and control to others. For the most part, all of the food that we're eating today is toxic, designed to subdue our creative energy, making us easily addicted to things that are unhealthy for us. Whether it's processed foods, rich with salt, sugar, and fat, or even our produce, which has been chemically engineered or sprayed with pesticides and herbicides.
The very history of how America was founded, and the founding fathers, so to speak, what vision they had when they were putting together the idea to found this country. What was their vision? What were they thinking? And what were they actually working toward? And now that gets into the subject of Freemasonry, to the secret sciences like alchemy and political. There's a lot of political stuff in there too. You have to be careful about secret societies, because these different societies become very powerful and very wealthy, but they have an agenda. They have a particular agenda that they're trying to create or to bring into being, and therefore they will build the whole world around you. And you accept what, when you're a child, a baby, you come into the world and you just accept everything. And if you don't grow up, you just, as a grown person, you just accept whatever there is because that's the way it is. But that's not the way it is. And you keep in mind that there were secret societies that were involved in founding this country. And who were they? And what were they trying to do? You have to know secret societies to understand why there are so many different symbols and emblems in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Because there's different groups, societies, that are working towards certain agenda, and they are putting symbols out that represent their agenda.
It was in 2000 that I first discovered David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret. In it, he writes about a global conspiracy, a hidden hand manipulating humanity's destiny through the shadows, using those who seem to be in power. And the goal of these shadow people? Nothing less than an Orwellian global superstate with total control at the hands of an ancient reptilian shape-shifting race.
Some have said that fluoride is the metaphorical tears of the New World Order, and that it's their most widely used weapon against us. The idea, in a nutshell, is that governments put fluoride in our water supply in order to negatively affect huge populations and facilitate mass control, whether for financial gain through the health defects that it causes, or for the purpose of disrupting our connection to the spiritual planes.
He began to outline his philosophy. Humankind was not in charge of its destiny. It was the unwitting prisoner of a race of shape-shifting lizards who occupied the roles in the highest echelons of society. From presidents to royal families, all trusted public figures were secretly part of a reptilian, Satanist pedophile group who had been on this planet for centuries.
On Monday, Politico reported that, pneumonia aside, Clinton's real issue is chronic dehydration due to her reluctance to drink water. One person in her orbit said she won't drink water, and you try telling Hillary Clinton she has to drink water.
The Queen's Cup final polo match was held in Windsor this weekend, with the monarch herself in attendance, despite sporting an extremely bloodshot left eye. Close-ups of the Queen showed the infected eye. However, Buckingham Palace remained tight-lipped over its cause, only saying that nothing untoward had happened and Her Majesty was in fine fettle.
She never drinks water, as Hillary herself once confirmed.
I drink tons of water, just as much water as I can possibly drink.
So, Hillary claims she drinks tons of water. Her campaign says she drinks none. Who is lying?
We all know that mummies have a dubious relationship with water coming from a desert culture. So, of course, she's going to have a different stand than the rest of us.
Is this mummy thing going to be the current through the whole show?
Well, for the next 2,000 years.
Okay.
Look, great. The problem is she has to be careful with water, and if we've all seen The Wizard of Oz, we know why, all right?
The point is, once again, they're lying. The campaign goes out there and says she never drinks water. I have video proof the woman, all she does is chug water in her spare time.
I don't know why they lie about everything. The weekend, my favorite thing is she came out and she said, "I'm fine, I feel great." And then she basically licked a child's face.
All right, the first case this afternoon is Justin Bieber. Mr. Bieber.
Which caught him from another angle, apparently shape-shifting into some sort of reptilian non-human form. Disregard all the distortions and image artifacts caused by post-edition zooming, and pay close attention to how his head features suddenly change. His ears, his nose, his chin, cheekbone, jaw and mouth are no longer looking human at all. Matter of fact, now he has a blatant non-human face. Did his shape-shifting device fail during Obama's speech, in the middle of an amphitheater crowded with people? Is he an actual reptilian humanoid? Is he one of the Anunnaki? Is he a tall grey bio-android, or what? Is that video evidence that the Illuminati elite is in bed with at least one ancient extraterrestrial race, hidden in plain sight, and pulling the strings of mankind?
For those who have already started seeing things with new eyes, it will be mostly a recap, but there could be a few new angles you haven't looked at. For the rest of you who are new to this, the first question is invariably, is this a joke? Because it's a joke, right? And that's where we start, because it's one of our two basic childhood facts. 1 + 1 = 2, and the Earth is a globe. We're taught this before almost everything else, and that right there should give you a clue on how serious this secret is. For the first 4,000 years of our civilization, we believe that the Earth was a flattish disk, surrounded by a solid dome barrier called the firmament. All of the 5 major religions had their own version of this. For 20 generations, people believed that the Earth was round because there was a globe in every classroom they sat in. There was no proof. The United States and Russia both sent up rockets high enough to take decent pictures, and what they saw scared them a great deal. How do we know they were extremely concerned about the sky? Because the US and Russia immediately started firing nuclear weapons straight up, and they kept firing for the next 4 years. In 1959, 10 nations, including the United States, made Antarctica off-limits to any colonization. A treaty was put in place, and to this day remains intact. Over 50 nations now have signed off on this treaty. Do you know any treaty that has lasted that long between all industrialized nations? By 1958, the military had discovered the very solid upper and outer edges of our world, and had to create a way to put up do not enter signs without looking obvious. You could theorize that kings and popes were told of the world a long time ago. Maybe an ancient scroll or book. Perhaps an interdimensional being told the tale of what the world looked like. Then the tough decisions have to be made. Do we keep the secret? And how far are we willing to go to keep the status quo? Once they decided to keep the secret, no expense was spared. The rapid progression of rocketry science had to be addressed quickly, and so the moon missions were created. Matt from the NASA channel was right in his thinking that you needed the moon mission event to stage a picture of the Earth from deep orbit. And that couldn't be more true. It was he who said, after over 50 years and thousands of hours of space travel footage, both by NASA and other countries, there is no exterior shot where the astronaut completes the simple act of panning the camera 180 degrees, let alone a full 360-degree sweep. This is because of the rule they cannot break, the same rule that applies to television set shows that never show the fourth wall. Why? Because there is no fourth wall. There are people who will tell you straight to your face that all the leaders of the world are lizards, and yet these people laugh out loud when you say the words flat earth. I was, and still am, a huge conspiracy guy. I literally ran out of new tin hat topics to research, and I still wouldn't look at this one without embarrassment. But every time I glanced at it, there was something unresolved. And once I saw the near perfection of the whole plan, I was hooked.
The field of archaeology recently saw some monumental discoveries that are rocking the foundation of what we think we know about ourselves. Many ancient cities such as Babylon, Erech, and Akkad that were written about in the Bible and other ancient texts were always thought to be myths because no one could prove they existed. Then, one of them was found. This led to finding another, and then another. Inside one of these cities, archaeologists found thousands of cylindrical clay tablets hidden deep within the earth under this ancient city. The tablets were completely covered in text written in cuneiform and tell an ancient story that spans back over hundreds of thousands of years on this planet, describing the history of the earth and the origins of the human race in great detail. Not only did the Dogons know all about the distant planets in the solar system, but so did the Sumerians. They described them all in great detail in these Sumerian records. They also knew about the precession of the equinox. The Sumerians had this information from day one of their civilization. Not only that, but Thoth has also shared information about this with us, and his account matches the Sumerian records. Adamus and other channelings discuss it as well. If you see all of these records and sources, there is a huge connection between the stories. Now, this story spans back hundreds of thousands of years into our past. It talks about Tiamat and Nibiru, seeding the human race, Adam and Eve, the Nephilim, and the children of Lemuria.
Nephilim. God destroyed the Nephilim's bodies and doomed them to wander the earth in an invisible dimension, and they are still terrifying men. In our modern paradigm, they are known as demon spirits. The word demon is from the Greek language and means knowledge. The demon knowledge is greater than man's. The Bible tells of their creation in Genesis chapter 6, and they were the cause of the destruction of life on earth. The book of Enoch tells of their giant stature and how they manipulated the genetics of man and animals in every imaginable way.
You've got writers who claim that we were created by the aliens, the Anunnaki, and obviously I don't believe that. I believe that all the myths of history center around this one thing, that basically supernatural beings had sex with earth women and produced giants. And it's in the Bible, it's in Genesis 6, Jude 6, 2 Peter, but more than that, and in addition to that, it's all through history.
And notice that the technology that we have here today, in the world today, just take a look around you, computer. We didn't have that 100 years ago. Go back 200 years. Look what has been accomplished over the past 200 years, and ask yourself, if these people were already advanced in metallurgy prior to, this is BC, this is way before the flood, for crying out loud, this is before Noah's Ark. They're building pyramids that we can't duplicate today. They're building buildings and monuments that we don't have a technology to do. I mean, that pyramid is sitting there, boys and girls, like it or lump it. It's there. We can't build one today. We don't have the money. There isn't anybody in the world, including the United States of America, has got the money to duplicate that Great Pyramid. Technologically, we could do it today, but it wasn't until 1964 that we were able to do it. Now, those people back in those days, they built that thing. And here's the Bible talking about space travel here in Deuteronomy 30, verse 4. And I'm sitting there saying, if we can come to space travel, if we can come to jet engine flight in 100 years, from 1900 to 2000, this isn't too much of a stretch of my imagination to see somebody doing this prior to the flood. These guys were not savages dragging their knuckles on the back of the ground. These were not Cro-Magnons. We can't duplicate the thing today. That tells me they got to be smarter than we are. Now, if we could duplicate the thing today, we'd have 4 or 5 of them sitting out there. And you don't see anybody building those today. Now, there had to be a reason for it. I don't know what the reason was. And that's another thing. People don't spend $32, $64, or $128 billion, building the most massive building that's ever been constructed in the history of mankind without a purpose. We haven't got a clue. Can't figure it out. Can you imagine space travel before Christ? Ancient science before Christ, civilization before Christ, flight, medicine, art, and clothing before Christ, equal to or superior to anything that we have today. Now, right away somebody says, well, if that were true, we would have heard about it from archaeology. You would? You would? Excuse me. In 1940, there was a skeleton up here in the Museum of Natural History. It was a 14-foot skeleton. Now, the Bible says there were giants on earth in those days. This is back in Genesis chapter 5, I believe it is, verse 6. There were giants on earth in those days. That does not fit with the theory of evolution. It doesn't fit with modern science. Now, go into that museum today, and you're not going to find that 14-foot skeleton that was there in 1940. I don't know what happened to it. I'm just telling you that in 1940 it was there. Today it's gone. It doesn't fit with the theory of evolution. And I first of all want to tell you that that is not science and that is not academic. Evolution is a fairy tale for adults that tells us once upon a time, long, long ago and far, far away. And then they proceed to tell us the story about how billions and billions of years ago thus and such occurred. Pure fantasy. There isn't a shred of evidence, not a shred of proof. No scientific tests can be duplicated. And, if people want to believe that, that's fine. There's no problem with that. People believe in religion. I kind of watch people, religious people. They scare the hell out of me, and I watch them as far away as I can get from them. Did you know that in Moses' time they had microscopes? I was absolutely amazed. Glasswork and microscopes. I'm going to give you some examples. 24 examples of glasswork and microscopes sit in the museums today, not on display. They sit down in the basements, hidden away so that you can't see them. Like the skeleton of the 14-foot giant up in Chicago. They're not on display. They exist, they were found, they've been recorded, we have the pictures of it, we know that they're there, but they don't fit the theory of evolution, and anything that doesn't fit with evolution is not put on display.
These evil spirits who proceeded from the giants that are still roaming the earth, and they will do so until the days of consummation. Here's what they do. They attack, they afflict, they oppress, they destroy, they do battle, they work destruction on the earth. They cause offenses. And again, these spirits proceeded from the giants who came from people and part spirit. And so their number one target are people. Number one target. Folks, some of this can get weird, but it will explain. You guys have knowledge of the great monoliths and so forth in the world. These great structures, the pyramids and everything else. I'm going to bust a few bubbles tonight. Because everybody's starting to go down this wrong path concerning all the constructions of old. And it's not right. Actually, it's quite simple. It's not complicated. It's not a miracle. It's something that was done. And you have to know the architecture of the spiritual realm to understand what I'm talking about.
What Thoth tells us is that every level of consciousness seen here not only has its own consciousness grid, but its chromosome change as well. The second level, where we are now, has 44 and 2 chromosomes. To any scientist, this is basic biology. The first level, however, has 42 and 2, and this third level has 46 and 2. The fourth and fifth have 48 and 2 and 50 and 2, respectively. The primary physically visible difference between these DNA in all life is height. The first level has an average height of 4 to 6 feet tall. The second level, us, has an average height of 5 to 7 feet. Third are about 10 to 16 feet, which we are about to translate to. Fourth is 30 to 35 feet, and the last is 50 to 60. You may remember a being named Metatron, the Hebrew archangel, who is the perfection of what humanity is to become. He was 55 feet tall, that guy. The last two heights are far in the distant future for us, though. This is a place in Egypt today called Abu Simbel. The first thing you notice is that these statues are huge, but with the information about the DNA, this paints a different picture. These beings would be in the 60-foot range if they were to stand. They were at the 5th level of consciousness. These beings on a different wall are 35 feet tall. 4th level of consciousness. Not one, but here are some third levels as well. Races. The first archaeologists saw this and thought that it meant that the man was just much more important than the woman. But when in actuality, the kings of Egypt had 5 different names, one for every level of consciousness. So they had to some of the kings were even able to translate into different dimensions, and that's how they guided the population with the power of the gods. Now, if this is true, this would explain quite a few things about the Hebrew people in general. They seem to have many sacred geometries hidden within their culture. It also puts perspective on the story of Exodus. Perhaps Moses incarnated into that lifetime to free the Hebrews because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly. Or could it be that Moses was visited by an ascended master of the Hebrews who guided him to free their people? Given what we know about dimensions and consciousness, it definitely puts a fresh perspective on old stories that didn't make much sense. We could talk about this more, but let's continue for now. There were no problems caused by the Hebrews coming to Atlantis. They actually benefited our evolution.
Because spirit is God, it can do this. There's nothing wrong with that. We've kind of been led to believe that Lucifer is evil and the devil. This just isn't true. Lucifer is just another means of perceiving the reality. It is not a unity perception of oneness, but rather a duality perception of living Merkaba. There's a flower of life pattern for Lucifer as well, but that's a big topic for another topic. Anytime the Lucifer experiment has been attempted in the universe, it always ends in failure. The species will cut itself off from love, and will be tied thousands of years now that they saw this little vortex sitting there.
I'm here with a UV test. See this umbrella here? This umbrella is not even 2 months old. It was bought at Ollie's. Look at it. See here? This was bright reddish orange. See how much it's faded? Even the inside here. Even the inside has faded. This was much brighter. 2 months, not even 2 months. This was bought in June. But look at it. Look at what the sun has done in less than 2 months. I mean, UV fade from the sun. The stellar cores, the white light, the simulator, whatever you want to call it. Maybe the sun has moons. We don't know. Well, we do know, but nobody wants to listen. It's just some weird stuff. Stay out of the sun. You know, pinkness in the clouds causes a mirror, a lens effect. It's like a dirty magnifying glass. Fires, anything can start. Magnifying the UVs by several times. Mainstream media says, oh, we're fine, but we're not. Just watch with the UVs, people. The cancer rates, the sun cancer, the skin cancer. We're being bombarded with things that we don't really understand.
Hello, this is what I see in the demon. That's really a pentagram. That's in our sky. That's what the demon had his hand on. I see now from his father Satan. And all you do, you cross and you touch it for God. Well, he did that for Satan. And you seen that demon that got by it, and he had his hand by it. That's really a pentagram in the sky. You have to hit him with that light over it, so you can't see it. Get the full armor of God. This is getting bad.
Hello, it's me. You know, indoctrination started while we were still naive, programming our beliefs. And that inertia is the reason we don't feel the earth spinning. Hello, can you hear me? Did you ever stop to question the confession of gravity as a theory? Funny thing, force alone can be explained with buoyancy and density. The sun is closer than what they've told us, not 90 million miles away.